What's up, Goofies? Welcome back to the channel. This is the second shorts compilation that we posted today. This is the hat lore one, but I also have the gun lore one up, and of course, the gun review. I recommend checking those out, but they are pretty long ones, so just settle in if you're gonna watch that. For now, let's get into these hat breakdowns. Enjoy the 10-minute-ish video. Breaking down Arthur Morgan's hat. Since this comment was the top comment, I must oblige. Arthur Morgan owned a leather gambler hat that has been pretty beaten up over the years. The hat belonged to Arthur's father, Lyle Morgan, before being passed down to Arthur once Lyle was hung. Over the years, Arthur's hat has become iconic alongside his blue shirt and brown jacket. This is truly peak. The symbolism of the hat also plays into the themes of the game. Black hats in Western stories are usually associated with the villain, while white hats are associated with the hero. In the eyes of the law, Arthur is a villain while Micah is a hero. Now that's scary. During the mission Red Dead Redemption, Arthur gives his hat to John. This is the literal passing of the torch, the main character switching from Arthur to John. John wears the hat in the mission Jim Milton Rides Again, showcasing John becoming the badass we saw in Red Dead 1. The final appearance of the hat is also ironic, as John wears it when taking revenge on Micah. We all know what wise man Fenton said, revenge is a fool's game. So John wearing the hat while taking revenge is basically spitting in Arthur's face. The hat symbolizes a lot in Red Dead 2, so I hope I got the most important symbols. This ends this hat review, so comment down below any more requests. Stay safe and breaking down John Marston's hats. The last hat breakdown did pretty good, and John's hats were requested, so here we go. In 1899, John owned a worn gambler hat that he wore throughout the campaign. John loses the hat, at least for a little bit, when the horses get shot down in Red Dead Redemption. Arthur then passes his hat down to John, showcasing that John is now the main character. Once epilogue starts, John wears this goofy ass flat top thing that I'm gonna ignore because there's nothing going on here. After getting employed at Pronghorn Ranch, John gets his gambler hat back. Now at this point, John is still holding on to the past as he keeps getting into trouble and endangering his family. The hat shows that John isn't ready to move on yet. Once Abigail leaves with Jackie, John realizes that he needs to change and dons his iconic outfit. Now this is a theory, but I'd like to think that John's Red Dead 1 hat was one of the gifts from Abigail. As we know, the other gift was a rancher shirt, so why not get him a new hat? This crusty thing was getting old and it was time for something new. It could also establish how much family means to John. He wears the hat the entire time he's building Beecher's Hope. The one time he doesn't wear it is when he raids Mount Hagen. At this point, John is fully engulfed by revenge for Arthur that he forgets what's truly important. This leads to Red Dead 1 and all of that business, but what motivates John is family. The hat representing family also ties into Jack, as he wears the hat when killing Ross, showing that Jack was motivated by the loss of the family around him and the grief that he felt with that. Overall, John's Red Dead 1 hat represents the familial ties that are important to John and Jack. This was a lot, but if you think I missed anything, leave a comment down below. Now let's get into breaking down Micah Bell's hat. Michelle's hat has been another highly requested one, so let's get into it. Micah Bell owned a white Big Valley hat. It's obvious Micah has had this hat for a while as it's pretty dirty and worn. Alongside his red shirt and big belly, Micah has his own iconic look that still doesn't come close to Arthy's. In terms of symbolism, Micah's hat has a major one. Western stories had the heroes of said stories rocking white hats. The villains had black hats. In the game, this idea is showcased by having Micah betray the gang. In the eyes of the law, this would be a heroic act. Though Micah is still not a hero, as I erroneously said in my Arthur hat breakdown. Micah is still a piece of shit. Just ask any Strawberry resident, any Vanderland. Micah's hat could also be related to loyalty, as white is associated with purity. Throughout the story, we see Micah follow Dutch wholeheartedly, and he never really questions old Dutchy. The white hat shows that Micah is pure in terms of loyalty, but it turns out just not the Dutch. Micah was only ever loyal to himself, making his white hat sort of ironic. Arthur's hat being black, a kind of cloudy color, displays Arthur's waning trust in Dutch. As Arthur himself says, be loyal to what matters. Arthur's loyalty is to the people around him, Micah's is to himself. It's a bit convoluted, but these are the symbols that are associated with Micah's hat. Hope it all made sense, but if it didn't, I can always explain again. With all that out of the way, let's get into breaking down Dutch Vanderland's hat. This hat series will probably end soon just because I can't cover every single hat. For now, I'll cover Hosea and Bill's hat, but I think that's it. Mr. Planderland rocks a black pork pie fedora that is relatively clean. Dutch is usually seen wearing the hat alongside the rest of his fit. This represents how Dutch views himself, a king surrounded by his knights. The very elegant look Dutch puts on is a facade to hide his ugly interior. The stark black is also a giveaway, as black is associated with darkness and evil and all that. Dutch being the leader of this ruthless gang of outlaws, yeah, it makes sense. The red he wears even adds on to this, more evil imagery. Dutch's hat alongside the rest of his outfit is a constant reminder that this charismatic guy we all enjoy hearing go on about Tahiti is the main villain of Red Dead Redemption. In quick summary, the black fedora Dutch wears is the giveaway, I guess, that Dutch is a villain. He always was, he always will be. He left John in prison, was willing to let Jack be an orphan, and abandon Arthur. Dutch will always be a bad guy no matter how charismatic he is. Anyway, let's get to breaking down Hosea Matthews Hat. Ho wears a blue stalker hat that fits his clean fit. Hosea doesn't wear the hat often, but he does wear blue a lot. Now this is just a bit of a fan theory / connection, but when High Honor Arthur wears the Whitmore suit, the vest is blue. I like to think that the blue Hosea wears represents that he is still a good person even while being an outlaw. We see Hosea's wisdom and kindness help out the gang, hell most of them see him as a father figure. So the blue hat represents the kind soul that Hosea is. Bit of a short one, but it's really all that I could come up with. Let's now get into breaking down Charles Smith's hat. This hat has been long awaited by Charles Smith online, and now I deliver. Charles wears a stalker hat, I guess. It's the closest thing to it. It's got a band wrapped around it and a red feather in the band. The feather represents Charles's native heritage and his overall bond with nature. We see this man rage over murdered bison, so it makes sense. The black hat symbolizes Charles' morality, similar to Arthur's black hat. Black hats, western villains, yada yada. Charles is a good man while still being an outlaw. We see him attack Braithwaite Manor and risk himself to help out the Wapiti Indians, build Beecher's Hope. Alongside Rip Van Winkle, Charles is just him. Overall, Charles' hat represents his native heritage and his morality while still being an outlaw. With this finally checked off the list, we can now get into breaking down Bill Williamson's hat. Another highly requested one, so I won't hold it off any longer. Marion wears a Hardee hat, pinned in a specific way that indicates Bill's service. Bill served in the 15th Regiment of the U.S. Army as a rifleman before being kicked out for attempted murder and deviancy. Basically, Bill was getting freaky with his fellow soldiers, if you know what I mean. The hat shows Bill still remembers his time in the army, and I'd say it also represents his loyalty. Being a soldier, you would grow loyal to your fellow corpsmen and superiors. Arguably the most loyal Vanderlyn, Bill fully trusts Dutch no matter what. That same loyalty leads him to turning against John and Arthur, so yeah, Bill's hat represents that. For being such a highly requested hat, Bill's hat was pretty simple. Next I'll be covering his gun, so watch for that. Let's get into breaking down Lenny Summers' hat. There's a typo in the title. Finishing up Lenny's breakdowns, let's get to his hat. Lenny usually rocks a worn gambler hat looking like Woody. There isn't much symbolism to this hat as it's just a simple accessory. Maybe the irony is having a young character wear an old worn hat, but the hat also could have been from Lenny's father, so there's that, I guess. Same thing with the stalker hat. There's just not a lot of symbolism. It could just be a hat Lenny likes, or a hat that reminded him of somebody somewhere, I don't know. It's just that at this point I'm kind of reaching for stuff, so during the Saint Denis bank robbery, Lenny wears a black gambler hat with a red stripe. This is the only time it's seen, as a few seconds later Lenny gets packed up. Seeing as how short this video was, I think I'll make a compilation of everyone else's hat after covering Sadie's stuff, but for now let's get into breaking down Sadie Adler's hat. Completing the Sadie Adler duology, let's go. For the first 2 chapters of the story, Sadie doesn't wear a hat, matching her very scared, mourning personality. Once she grows sick of being treated as lesser, she will change into her more vengeful personality, and this is showcased by having her change into the cowgirl outfit. After this point in time, she was very confident in her abilities and is very eager to go out breaking the law. So yeah, Sadie's hat represents the change in her personality as she goes from widow to Jessie. That's everything, so let's get breaking down Sean Macguire's hat. The Rizzler has been requested a lot, so here we go. Sean owns a green bowler hat, and no, it doesn't look like a leprechaun hat, at least not really. In terms of symbolism, the only thing I have is the fact that it's green. The Irish flag is a strip of green, so maybe Sean's hat is another indicator of his clear heritage. Or he's a leprechaun. Honorable mention, but in his promotional art, he has a black variant of this hat, though it doesn't show up in game. His gun breakdown is a lot more info, so check it out. But we're done here, so let's get in. Breaking down Javier's Escuella's hats. Speedy has 2 interesting hats that I've neglected to cover, so here we go. First up is his black bowler hat, similar to Sean's. Is this another case of Western villain cliche? ways, yeah, sorta. The few honorable acts we see Javier do don't really redeem him, so there's that. His next hat is the classic sombrero. This hat is obviously meant to represent Javier's heritage and his connection to Mexico. In game, he does talk about how much he misses Mexico, so having him wear it represents that. I'm sure that this hat is also in Red Dead 1. I mean, they look similar enough. At this point, the hat is another brother to Javier. So finally, there it is, finishing up the Javier duology, and it took long enough. Anyway, let's get into it. Breaking down Uncle's hat. Lumbago got me, so I wasn't able to cover Uncle's hat earlier, but now here we go. While he doesn't really wear hats, Unc did own a version of a plantation hat. While it isn't as big, it is pretty similar. And to get this out of the way, no, it isn't Red Harlow's hat. I don't know what hat Red Harlow owns, but it definitely isn't this one. The only connection I can make is that Uncle doesn't like work like a plantation owner. Definitely Mr. Fantastic with these stretches, but that's it. Uncle is lazy and watches work rather than actually doing it. Anyway, this series is wrapping up, so let's get into it. With that ends our journey here down memory lane with the hat lore breakdown, but there's still another compilation left. Be sure to check that one out, but for now, thank you so much for watching the whole thing. Thanks to those of you that have subscribed this year, I appreciate it a lot. Thanks to those of you that have commented and liked these series, I appreciate everything you guys do. Stay safe, God bless, goodbye.